It has been far too long since we've had a guest on, so today we're going to have one collector interview that I've been looking forward to doing for quite a while. So let's not waste any more time and get right into that. Welcome to the most passionate content for card collectors on YouTube and possibly the whole entire internet. As usual, I am your host, Jake Roy, 90s B-Ball Cards here on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and you know the story with TikTok. So still no changes there yet. But so today we've got a collector on that I've known for quite a while. You may know him as GradedSports.Cards or Ethan. So he has been collecting since the 90s, just like me. Very similar story to me, but the difference in his story is he's actually created a business around his passion in cards. And we're also going to talk about his new venture with a grading service that I think might be very beneficial, at least to myself, and maybe you as well. So he's going to share some more about that as well, and his history with collecting. And he started making YouTube content, really sharing some information and insights about grading. If I remember correctly, it was actually before I started my channel, or right around the same time maybe. So he's been doing that for a long time, a lot of experience that he has to share with the hobby. So let's get right into that. Before we do, just a little preface. I had some issues on my end with the video quality, so the audio is probably going to be a little bit more valuable than the actual video itself. So, you know, put this on, have some headphones in, walk around, do whatever you want while you're listening. It does clear up towards the end, but, you know, I was having some Wi-Fi issues, so I need to call my provider and get that straightened out. But anyway, just wanted to make sure you understand that. Bear with the issues. It was all on my end. Ethan came in just fine, so hopefully that doesn't bother you too much, but great conversation, and the audio is clear, even if the video is not. So let's get right into it. Ethan, thank you so much for joining me. I've been looking forward to talking to you. I know, actually, we were trying to meet up at the National in person, and you weren't feeling so hot. And today, some of my family members aren't feeling so hot. So hopefully, Atlantic City, we can make up for lost time there.
Oh, definitely, we need to. We got to put that on the agenda day one. Definitely meet up. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to National, but today what I really want to talk more about is you put just a little bit of information out on Instagram and on YouTube about the new grading service that you are offering, which sounds really exciting, but I want to hear more from you about that. So let's jump right into the meat and potatoes and hear more from you. You know, what are you offering? What makes you different? What do you want people to know about your grading service?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the offer to have me on here because I know, like, I specialize in 90s basketball cards, Michael Jordan, and that's what I love as a collector. But you know, the service we have is GSC Raw Review grading service, and I basically made this because, number one, I've graded millions of cards, come to the store, and I have a pretty good eye. I've sent in thousands to PSA, some to SGC. And you get a pretty good eye, and I'm a lifelong collector. I can tell what a card goes in, what's coming out. And at this point, I thought I didn't want to have. See, a lot of people have these new slabs that they break open. We saw Rob Veras; he's breaking open slabs on his
right,
the Card Father. And so I really didn't want to have just like a dinky slab. And then also some other companies that have come by have spent a lot on their slab, but it still warps and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And what I really wanted to do is do raw reviews so I can do low cost. Right now, you can send a card in for $7 and then even less with with bulk submitting. Each 25, 50, 100. But anyways, if you want raw review with subgrades, which I believe we're the first raw review to offer subgrades, you can do that for, I believe it was $17, and even less for bulk submitting. But what I want to do is provide a service for people that are kind of left out, and that's way below $17, way below where you can get other subgrade offers. That gives people more options, and also I let people, they can just send me their cards in, 100 at a time, and I'll send them back the list. They don't have to do long, convoluted submission processes. We also do cleaning service, so we'll clean the cards just like, I think it was $1 or $2 more. I'll clean and polish the card with a microfiber, clean up the cards, and that way people can get back. They'll have a trained eye polished card, and I think I got one sitting here. It's not the best one. Oh,
no Jordan rookies.
No, I don't have a Jordan rookie. This right here, this is a Derek Jeter rookie, but you see it's got a it's in a Card Saver 1 with a nice label, tamper-proof. I have a piece of metal in here that keeps it. It's got rigidity because Card Saver 1 doesn't really have any rigidity, but it's got a little strip of metal in there, and then the metal's tamper-proof label. But anyways, and so it also has the subgrades on the back. This one's just a straight up 9.5 across the board, but it went up to a 10. And I also have an algorithm. Makes it kind of hard to get a 10 because most of the weight is put on the lowest number, and that's pretty much it. So,
wow. So that's really interesting. So I'm thinking hypothetically, if somebody sent some cards to you, let's say I've got, a bunch of Penny Hardaway rookies, and I'm thinking about sending I'm thinking about sending them to maybe PSA or BGS. I can send them over. You can take a look at them first, and from your grading scale, I'm going to get a good idea of what I should be targeting from either BGS, PSA, SGC, and then I can probably make an informed decision. If I want to just send over the best one, I can take the 10, send them over, pick the one that I want. Is that kind of one of the intents there?
You can do that, and the long-term goal is that I want to have a label that adds value, intrinsic value. Because whenever you see a PSA, you automatically say that's a 10, it's worth X amount, and if I get a 9, it's worth whatever amount less. And that's in our minds as collectors. We know Michael Jordan PSA 1990 Fleer number 26, whatever. We just know what it was at 9, pre-pandemic, after pandemic. We just know. So what I want long term is for people to actually trust the value they see automatically, and so that'll take a lot of hard work on our part and dedication to every time I see a card. And I have 2 other graders that I've been trading for years, but I want long term for there to be intrinsic value. But for the short term, if somebody wants to send a card in, I want them to know that they can know that value, or not value, but that grade is a safe grade.
So one of the things that I think a lot of people are curious about, right, when they see like a new grading company, a new service that pops up, and like you said, you've got thousands and thousands of cards that you've sent out for grading from the major companies, so lots of experience. But people also want to see people that have been doing it for a while, so not just like, I did a ton of volume last month. So I know that you started a business really buying raw and grading to sell. So can you tell us, like, when did you start really getting your your lessons, your college tuition on grading? So how long have you been grading and really building up this expertise and being able to look at a card and really have a good idea of what condition it's in?
Well, I'm a lifelong collector, and I did take a little time off after I graduated high school because life, but and that happens. But as soon as I got back into it, I got a hold of a large collection after I was getting cards in, and people started sending me messages about cards. And they sent me a message about a Scoring Kings, Michael Jordan, and they started asking for close-up pictures. And then I just said, I got to start grading these, and I went through and graded thousands, looking after them, trial and error. The biggest thing I would say, and that was I would say 2016, and the biggest thing, I don't know how long I'm going to leave my PSA submission videos up, because because now I'm doing something totally different.
Sure.
But I might leave them up for posterity, just so people can see. But when I first started getting them back, I was sending off a lot of cards that I knew weren't perfect, but I was wondering if they were going to see the mistakes,
see what you see,
see what I see, and also see if how far they were going to knock it down. And one of the biggest things that I saw was, and you can see it in my videos, I know, is every card that came back with a white dot on the corner, because I sent a lot of like basketball heroes, Michael Jordan, and things with bold corners and bold edges. And so whenever there was a white dot on the corner, it got a 9. It didn't matter.
Automatically.
Automatically. So it was like somebody just saw it, said white corner 9, white corner 9. And so I'm not saying that's what they did, but it was just, you could easily see the mistake. Getting back to your question. So the biggest thing was trial and error, and sending thousands and thousands and paying those submission costs yourself. That's when,
a little bit cheaper back in 2016 than it is now. But
even sending them the last couple of years, it's been you definitely stop, and you can see exactly what's going on. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, one of the videos that I remember was really helpful, not that I've necessarily gone and done this, but just for my own knowledge, is I remember you took some cards that were BCCG and BGS graded, and you looked at them as far as what they got from those companies and sent them out to PSA, and then talked about, okay, this is what it was, this is what I was expecting, and this is what I ended up getting. And I thought that was really valuable, but I think that also goes to like your expertise. Like, you've done these experiments, for lack of a better term, to really be able to see, what transfers to what. And also, like you were saying, certain things are going to be seen more heavily, weighed more heavily when you're getting them graded by, PSA, BGS, or whoever it is, right?
Exactly. And it's, going with that, I think SGC 10, and especially Gold Label, is a very it's a very nice label. It has a lot of intrinsic value that is going to be realized. And I think going as far as like with what you were saying, as far as taking cards out of other slabs, I wouldn't even get too carried away with that, because I think the intrinsic value of a SGC 10 is going to catch up with a lot of modern cards.
Yeah, especially like you were mentioning the pristine 10 that they have with that Gold Label. Going to shows, I don't see a lot of SGC 10s, but I definitely don't see, many at all of those Gold Labels. Just like with BGS, you see some 9.5s, not a ton, but you really don't see many 10s, and definitely hardly any, if any, black labels at a lot of shows that you go to. So, whereas you see a lot of PSA 10s, but that's, gem mint versus pristine and all that. So
now that was going back to one of your earlier questions. That was for my label is I have no 9.5, so it goes 10 to 9. So if you're close, if you're a 9.4 with the algorithm, it's a 9, and 9.5 and up is a 10. And then you can look on the back, and I don't have a gold label or whatnot, but it would be my idea would be people could see it's a 10 and look on the back and say how much of a 10 we're looking at. But the lowest you would ever see was that Jeter you saw with the 9.5s across. If that had 9.5, 9.59, it's a 9.
Okay, so basically, that Jeter that was all 9.5 subgrades is like a min 10, a min gem, if you will.
Hopefully one day they'll have a nickname for my system.
Right. So that's the lowest that in your grading scale you could get a 10 is all 9.5s across the board. If you got 3 9.5s and 1 9, that's automatically going to be a 9 overall grade for your scale. And then if you get 110, so here's a question: if you get 110, 2 9.5s and a 9, what would that? Do you know what that would come out to?
That would actually raise it, but if you had a 10, a 9.5, and 2 9s, it's a 9.
Okay. And what if it was a 10? Now I'm seeing how much of the algorithm is in your head, right? So if you get a 10, 2 9.5s, and let's say an 8.5 or an 8, would that go down to 9, or is it down lower than that?
It would. It would be a 9. It would be 9.
Okay.
It's it doesn't hurt. One of the things I've noticed about grading is that they say that it's an overall grade, but there are other things on these modern cards that are actually a 9.5. Like you'll have smooth edge, 100% smooth, corners are great, and then but it's slightly off centered to an 8, and they call it an 8. And that's something that that's in the algorithm, but that I don't like too much, because in all essence, a 9.5 centering, if it's all graded on all the card, then that should raise it up. But yeah, if you're only doing an 8 centering and everything else is gem mint, like you were saying, it's a 9.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's really good to know, because a lot of people always, question with PSA 9s versus 10s because you don't have those subgrades. So I think it's interesting when you're looking at, now we've got those subgrades, but you've still got the 9 and the 10. So you know how that breaks down.
In my mind, and I don't want to talk out of school or out of place, but in my mind, there's the computers that are looking at all the cards. And this is just, I'm a fanboy. I love PSA, and I would not have a business if it was not for PSA. So I don't want to talk out of school. But in my mind, the computer spits out what is the centering, obviously, or else why would they have the computer system? Or it could possibly also note errors on a lot of different errors. But if it just says this is 8 centering, and we're not going to give this over a 9, or we're not going to give this over an 8, or on certain cards. But I mean, yeah, they definitely have a much more polished system, because they also go into depth on which types of cards need a stricter. Like if you're talking, was 81 NBA with the Magic, with that?
I think 80, 81 with the 3 and the perforations. Yeah,
and also with that small white border going all the way across. If that's even 5347, then it's an 8. It seems like, or at least there's anyways. Back to what you're saying. I just think it's that sometimes the centering knocks it all the way down to an 8.
Sure. Yeah, I know. I've heard anecdotally that eye appeal really has an impact, especially on the front. It's one of the other things I was just thinking about. So I've also anecdotally heard people talk about how defects on the back of the card, centering, you've got kind of more margin for error. If you've got like a corner that shows on the back rather than the front, kind of the eye appeal of the front matters a lot more when you're going with, PSA and some of those. But for your grading scale, do you have more leniency on defects on the front, as opposed to the back, or?
Well, once again, I go with what I've sent off to PSA, and it's mostly on the front, but on the back, if you have, there's some forgiveness, but I've sent off, like I had a out of 10 Luka Doncic rookie, and on the back it had a huge white dot on the back, which if there's people don't think about it much, but because the Prism cards have chrome on the front, but on the back, if they have that card stock, you get a white corner on the dot on the back, the grader's going to turn it over, and it's so easy to see. You have to turn them all over to look at them and look for bad creases, because also if you wouldn't know on the front if a card is creased. You look on the back and you get to see the little indentions are on the back of the card, not on the front, a lot of the time. And so, yeah, it's definitely, I go off the front, and then and I grade, and I look on the back, and that's when you start marking off.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. I've got one card I just sent out to PSA, and it's got a couple of like kind of, wrinkles, if you will, on the back. Look kind of minor, but I'm curious to see what that comes back at, because I have one. I don't know if you saw my grading video. I think it was my first one of the first ones I did, where I had the Kobe EX 2000 rookie. And I sent it out, and I was like, I knew that there was some stuff on the, the surface on the front and the edges. And I was thinking like maybe like a 7 or an 8, and it came back a 5. And I was like, what? So then I started looking at it a little more closely, and on the back, right by his elbow, where he has kind of his elbow flexed, a huge crease right across his elbow that I'm just like, you knucklehead, how'd you miss that? But, there it is, and it makes complete sense. I knew some stuff on the front, but I totally missed that one on the back. So these ones that I just sent out are much more minor. So I'm curious to see how those turn out.
Oh yeah, I just graded one yesterday. It was a Allen Iverson EX 1996, and you start looking at that one closely, and you're just like, why is his finger doing this? And you start noticing all the centering and missing foil. It's just, that card is really hard to grade.
Yeah. It's funny because I have a PSA order that's coming back, maybe the end of this week or next week. That now in hindsight, all of those cards I sent in that order, I would have sent to you first if this service was available. So, because I was poring over them, at $50 a card, the margin of error is a little bit more steep with some of these cards that I'm sending off, the PC ones that I want graded anyway or whatever.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking to maybe sell or trade them, some of these cards, $50 makes or breaks, depending on if they're, an 8 or a 9. So it'll be interesting to see, how much I'm kicking myself for not having waited until your service is ready. But, only time will tell.
This is something I thought of today, and going along with that is, I don't know how many slabs people can ultimately have in their basement, but if you look at that, you could have thousands and thousands of these.
Right.
But the slabs, I've got an office, and that's where I keep all mine. But when people were talking about all the cards coming back, they call it the Slabalanche. And it's just how many cards is one person, how many cards is each collector supposedly going to have? Let's say they each have 100. Well, 100, I can have a stack of 100 cards like right here. But the slabs, right? You're going to keep them in your safe. Like, how many good cards are you going to keep? It's
right.
definitely something that we're going to have to start looking at, as far as how many collectors are there, and realistically, how many slabs are these collectors when are they going to stop? When are they going to say, I've had enough, or I'm just going to curate a better collection, stay at this many slabs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because space is definitely an issue for a lot of folks. And I know for like my own PC, the raw stuff, I've recently been switching them from top loaders into card savers for that exact same reason. They're so much thinner, even than a top loader. But yeah, when you compare it to, especially the BGS slabs take up a lot more real estate in a shoebox, if you will, or something like that, than some of the others, but a lot more than a top loader or a card saver. And I also think about the weight, that a slab is a lot more substantial weight than a top loader or a card saver. So again, when you're, maybe storing them on the shelves, you're going to have some pretty hefty shelves if you've got, tons and tons and tons of slabs on them. Because then that, obviously if the shelf fails and, you get broken slabs all over the floor, you're going to be kicking yourself. So,
I've been there.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised when I was looking at return shipping for after I do my service is actually not that much, because I was like, okay, well, that makes sense, because it's going to weigh about as much as one of my eBay shipments. But going back to your earlier question, I was doing my videos. I did my PSA reveals, and I was trying to do tips and how to send off a card properly with no Scotch tape. I've been on the forefront of that. No Scotch tape, only blue painter's tape. And then exactly. And then we switched over to now team bags.
Yes.
Everything in the store is in team bag, graded team bag. Even my top loaders, like by the player, by the brand, they're all put together with 8 per graded card bag. But anyways, what I started doing, the reason why I stopped uploading, which you've asked me before why I stopped uploading, is I started seeing people submit the same cards as I was submitting.
Oh, okay.
And so they were taking my tips. And what I like to say is, I'm not that smart. I'm not the smartest person. I have some intuition and some things I've figured out. But if everyone knew the few little tips and tricks that I knew, then none of us would be getting anywhere or doing anything or making any money, because that's all I got. So once I started seeing people, like, I was like, oh, okay, people are sending that card in, like the basketball heroes. That was like a very, very low pop and hard to get. And so I was collecting quite a few of them. And at the time, 2017, very easy to collect those, very easy to get those. And I love ComC. Shout out to them, because you can see like basketball heroes on that card goes all the way up and down. So you can see, are you gonna be able to see each one of those letters? Because that's obvious, and you can see the close-up pictures. So I've used them my entire since I've had my business. But then I started noticing that lots of people were sending them in, and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. And then I started seeing it over and over. You can blame me for, it was about summer 3 years ago. I started, you don't necessarily have to blame me, but I was one of the first people that started sending off Chrome Kobe Bryant and Topps Chrome LeBron James, and they were just gone off of eBay.
Okay, the rookies or second, third year.
Any.
Okay.
Well, my frame of mind, my thinking was, I quit my job after only collecting and buying and selling Michael Jordan cards. That's all I did. And then I started to branch out about the time that I was quitting, because I had a lot of extra time. So, but I put my same thinking towards that. And then I just remember thinking, you can't find a Chrome Michael Jordan. You couldn't find one for cheap. But all of a sudden you could find like $5 to $10, second year Kobe Bryant Chrome. You could find second, third, fourth, fifth year Topps Chrome LeBron James. And as soon as I bought there was only probably 65, 80 copies of those on eBay. That was about the time the craze started happening, and people that were much more knowledgeable than me, that knew to get, is like, well, let's get the refractors. let's spend a little bit extra to get the refractors, and then we'll 10x that money. So they went a little further down the rabbit hole, but I did help get that started.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so it's interesting to think about, because a lot of people point to, like, the top 2 or 3 YouTube influencers, as far as like, oh, well, this influencer really shifted the market, and we've seen some of that where like a video comes out tomorrow. I remember I specifically saw it with like the 97-98 Flair Showcase Jordan, the row 3. Love that card. I think it's beautiful, elegant. I love the picture. I think it's like an iconic pose of Jordan, and he's got the 13s on in there. I love that card. But from when I was a kid back in 97 up to 2019, that's been a $10 card very consistently, with maybe a couple of dollars of play, and then all of a sudden, like overnight, it was a $30 card. And it was like, there was just one video that talked about it, and all of a sudden everybody was like, I need that, and then the supply got zapped up.
Well, that plays into what I was saying is, and that's the reason why I don't really have a huge following on YouTube, and I don't have a huge following on Instagram. But what I do have a huge following on is my eBay account. I have 3,000 followers on eBay, which is actually kind of hard to do. People they can't see what I submit, but they can see what I post. And I was on the forefront of that Flair as well, because it was that one, and then also the 2006 EX Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah,
with the acetate is, and I'm gonna let you behind the curtain a little bit. I looked at that card, and I believe a lot in price points. There's lots of price points, and right now with fluctuations, and with everything going on, it's kind of been thrown out the window. But there was a 3-year period where price points were very important, and I'll explain that to you. I'll explain that not to you, but like the Fleer EX Michael Jordan with the really nice acetate, and I just said that's a $50 card. There's no way that's not a $50 card, and so I bought as many as I could for 10, 15, 20, and I put it in my store at 50, and it was selling for $50, and now you can't get one for less than 100 or around there, especially if it's graded. I wish I would have kept my 10s that I graded.
Right.
But yeah, that one, the card you were just talking about, the flares, the Michael Jordan medal, all those, the Michael Jordan medals, they're selling for sometimes $5 to $8. I look at it and I said, there's no way that's not a $30 card. I'm going to explain that more in my videos that I go into, but about the price points. But one of the main reasons why I started my business is I was about to get on a plane and I saw a Michael Jordan auction ending, and it was for 100 cards, and I was like, why is it so low? Because one of the cards I saw was his Michael Jordan, like where he's sitting there, he's got the ball, and it's the Team USA. Yeah, like that's a $5 card in 1993. That's a $5 card.
Right.
So in 2016, how are we going to sell 100 Michael Jordan cards for $30? That's what it ended at. So it ended at $30, and that happened so many times in 2016, 17, 18 that I was able to quit my job. I was able to just buy those and then start staying up every night, looking up values, and then started to get a feel for the cards that were. You start to get a feel for, like, I don't see that 2006 EX Michael Jordan very often.
Right.
In fact, I only see it in 1 out of 60 collections or 1 out of 60 lots. And so that's when you start to get a feel for it. And you're like, that card is about this rare. And then to get a card, one of these other cards in good condition is rare. And you start to get more of a feel for it. Anyways.
But I think that's really important, because I've talked to like a couple of my, close friends who have gotten into cards recently. And, I had said, like, one of the things that I started to really cut my teeth when I was really buying a lot more and taking a lot more seriously is I was doing a lot of buying and selling not selling. I was doing a lot of buying. I don't sell much at all, but on Facebook. And at that point, I think we're talking like 2017 at this point, it was really popular to have fire sales, right? And people would say, hey, I'm going to, start the sale at this time and all that kind of stuff. And there'd be, maybe 2 people that would be actively watching it, and stuff would get posted, and you have a price and it would sell like instantly, like in seconds. You'd be very quick. So that was one of the ways that I had kind of honed my skill of like just being able to see a card and not having to necessarily look up the comps for every single card. I just kind of knew a ballpark in my head of like, this is worth that, or it's high or whatever. And sometimes you miss and you're slow, and then you learn, and you keep learning. But I think, kind of it's the same point of what you're saying, as far as like, you can just see things after you get enough repetitions and just kind of like, you just know intuitively a ballpark. And like I said, sometimes I'm wrong, and sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a $5 card every day. And then I did this at National where I was in dollar bins and I was doing really well the first 2 days, and I'm kind of feeling myself. And then I start picking up some stuff that's a little bit outside of my knowledge base, and I'm like, oh yeah, definitely, I know what I'm doing here. And then again, you're talking dollar bins, so I'm picking these cards up for $1 or $2, and I'm like, this is definitely a $5-10 card, and I get it back to the room and I'm like, no, that's a $1 card, so it's fine, but it's like, you better like it, because it's a $1 card. Who's gonna buy that on eBay? So
yeah, there was like so I was a professional blogger, and I was really good at sports search engine optimization. And one of the biggest things I learned is black hat and white hat SEO, and that when you get into the big corporations, they just want you to be clear, concise, and truthful. They don't like black hat SEO. So I put everything I put on eBay, which I went home every day and did eBay posts, because that's the way I wanted to grow my eBay store. Caveat to that, when I first started, the people I wanted to be like, when I looked at everything, is Four Sharp Corners and Burbank Sports Cards. Not on Instagram, but on eBay. So those were my views. Those were a lot of people, they start on Instagram and they're like, I want to be yada yada. I want to be this person on Instagram. But what I wanted was, I was like, I want to reach their level on eBay, which I might not ever do. But back to what I was saying. So I went home every day and everything I posted on eBay was like a search engine optimized post, just like a blog post with a picture and something about the card and the correct everything, all the little buttons correct and everything perfect. And so eBay started to like my store. They started to see that I was selling things and pricing them pretty correctly. And that's when there was probably about a 2-year period where I was posting every Michael Jordan card I got. And I started getting into like the kind of rarer Team USA cards and the inserts and the parallels. And I was basically the Beckett for Michael Jordan cards on eBay, because nobody gets Beckett, but they look on eBay. And I had all the cards. So for about 2 to 3 years, my store was the Beckett of eBay for a lot of Michael Jordan cards, and then going into lower end, LeBron, Kobe. That's where I was at about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. So like if there was one that sold, it was probably selling through your store.
Yeah. I also buy off eBay. So there's a lot of people that would actually message me back and said, I got the price from you. I just went through my whole collection of 300 Michael Jordan cards and whatnot. And I just looked at your store and that's the prices I used. And so it's pretty funny. And I'm sure a lot of people were like, why is this guy buying my cards when he has all the cards? But I love buying cards.
Yeah. I know there's some cards that like I've got multiple copies of, and it's just like, if it's a card I love and the price is right, I'll get more and more. Exactly. And actually, like there was one, so the Penny Star Attractions Gold that I just love that card. Before I had one, it was hard to find. And a lot of times like the price was pretty high, because it's like, well, there's no comps, there's no others for sale, so I can charge what I want. So when I finally started getting one, I was like, okay, I know what these cost. So if I found any close to that price or lower, I would grab it. And I just sent 3 out, which are the only 3 that have been graded by PSA, and all 3 got 9s, nice. Which I was very surprised by, because the cards are notorious for having all kinds of edge and surface issues. So, but I had a bunch of them I could compare against each other, and I knew which ones were the better of the bunch. But it doesn't mean I'm getting rid of the other ones, because I just love that card. I can't get enough of it.
It's a beautiful card.
Got that. Yeah, they
are. It's a hard one to get. Speaking of that, there was a card here's a card that when I started, because I stopped collecting when I was about 18, 19, and started back at 30, and then just got the cards I could. Here's a card that I wanted to show you that I thought everyone wanted, and that every Michael Jordan card collection would have. And it's the Chaos and Windy City Michael Jordan insert from the Nintendo 1994 Nintendo little insert, because he had the video game where you would throw basketballs, Chaos in the Windy City. And I thought that was every good Michael Jordan collection had one. But no one today cares about this card. It's insane. I looked at it. It's a near mint 7. It's a PSA Pop 3 with 17 higher.
Okay.
And I don't get any questions about this card at all. As far as I'm concerned, it can sit in the store forever. But it's because I love the card and I'll just keep it. But because I have a nice price on it, but that's because I know you can't get. It's hard to get this card at a PSA 7, let alone anything higher. There's only 17 higher in the world.
Right.
Anyways, that's the type of thinking I have that usually the collecting world catches up on stuff like that, where I'm like, this card perforated edges. It was in a random magazine, because people are starting to catch up with the Sports Illustrated cards, which I was ahead on.
Yeah.
And I'm not bragging when I say that. That's just, this is what I do for a living. But I was ahead on the Sports Illustrated cards. To get them back at a PSA 10 is insane. But to get the Chaos and Windy City, when there's a perforated edges in a Nintendo Power magazine back in 1994, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I remember it was probably a year or two ago, and I can't remember like all the details, but like I remember I was on like somebody's live stream or Instagram live or something, and I just kind of was thinking and just like sharing my thoughts in the comments, and I was like, I wonder if SI Kids cards will ever like catch on. And somebody responded back like, no, Jake, you're zagging too hard or something like that. And I was like, first off, before you start accusing me of anything, I haven't bought any of these yet. But I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? In case they do start getting hot, I want to go and get the pennies that I want in my collection now while they're $1 or $2. So I went and got all the different ones of penny, and then my buddy started buying up some of the first year Brady's, because he's a Brady collector, and he's like, you know what? I like these cards, because when I was a kid, my brother got the SI Kids. And I remember we always were like, these are cool that they have cards in them, but we never wanted to take them out of the magazine. So it was always kind of like, how do I get that one of my guy without having to take it? So that was one of those things. So now that you can buy them, people have taken them out of the magazines. Like my daughter really loved watching Simone Biles and Gabby Douglas. So I went and got some of their SI Kids cards, and I was like, you know what? These are fun cards for her. And if they become really sought after, great. But if not, like, I got them because I enjoy them. But I think it's an interesting thing, because we are seeing like those first year Brady's, especially if they grade well, are selling for a bunch. And obviously like the quote unquote rookie card of Serena Williams and Tiger Woods and Tony Hawk and some of those that don't have like, all the tops and the upper deck rookies. I think it's an interesting thing to see.
Oh yeah, and there was sometimes things are one of my favorite things to talk about is parallel thinking. So you went down the rabbit hole of Sports Illustrated, and then you started thinking Simone Biles and my daughter, and this is fun. So parallel thinking is one of the things that can get us in trouble, or it can put you on a level where you start thinking of problem solving, and because there's problems with everyone's collections, and there's parallels that people haven't seen. So one that I saw that I've never done a pump and dump. I know how it works. I have posted cards that I know are worth a certain amount, like the Chaos and Windy City, and that's my pump and dump. I post it for what I think it's worth, and then if it doesn't sell, then it'll sit in I'll be left holding the bag.
Sure.
Which has happened, and that's fine. But I'm also a collector, so these cards will be sitting here. One card you can tell your friend is that I've been collecting that are hard to get at PSA 10s is the gold medallion Tom Brady's ultra gold medallion, because I've been buying them up every time I can see them, and they're hard to get. I think you can get all the way back down to his rookie card, 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're hard to get. And the 2006 looks almost discernible from the regular. You have to look on the back for slightly gold foil, not foil, but slightly gold print on the back. But the front is almost indiscernible.
Yeah, it's funny because like my buddy has been ahead on some of the trends now. Where he and I haven't been necessarily smart enough is like he was ahead on, he sees parallels sometimes because he's a Brady collector primarily, but he also, enjoys other football cards. And he's seen some parallels at times between the basketball and the football. And sometimes, the basketball cards, especially over the last couple of years, would jump. And then like the football cards would kind of lag behind. So he would, if he saw like, for example, like the 2012 Prism stuff started jumping. So he would see that. He's like, I'm going to get on the Brady, before it jumps also. Now, again, like I was saying, maybe we aren't as smart as we think we are, because he keeps saying to me, if I was really smart, I would have bought 10 of that card instead of just the one that I needed for my collection, and I would have sold them now. So that's the thing though, is it's like the difference between like somebody who's just trying to like, I want to get it before it gets too hot for my collection, as opposed to somebody like you who's like, okay, I think this might be a thing, and I'm going to keep it for my collection if it doesn't become a thing, and that's fine. But if it does become a thing, now I've got a couple extra that I can move.
And one thing as you were talking, 1996, I'm getting the Shaqs off the board. 1996 gold medallion, Fleer gold medallion, you can get the pennies, which was going to be, I was thinking which one I want to get, because I was already one of the first people to start getting the 1986 gold medallion Michael Jordans, and also and what that card. Now I'm getting the Shaqs, but you can get the pennies and you can have that all to yourself. I won't touch them, because that card is so beautiful. With the gold, it's completely gold all the way around. It looks like a brand new card. Could have been made this year. Love those cards.
Yeah, no, I always have said, like, so for 97 Ultra, when they first had the serial numbered platinum medallions, I like the gold medallions better than the platinum medallions in that year, because the monochrome look of the platinum medallions is cool, but you lose some of like the intricacies of like the 90s jerseys and the colorfulness, which I really like. Whereas the gold, who doesn't love gold, right? But also, like, you still have the player in color, like in that Kobe picture where you still got the Lakers purple and gold, and then you got the gold background, is a really, really sweet looking card. So like, yeah, I love those gold medallions. Again, aesthetically, I like the gold medallions more than the platinum medallions, which a lot of people will disagree with me, and that's totally fine. We like what we like, right?
Exactly. And the same thing is with that is the smarter people, when they hear me talk about the gold medallions, they just start thinking, if that guy's going after the gold medallions, I'm getting the platinum, and I'm that much smarter. So people, they hear what I say and they go even further, and that's fine. It's going to happen, but there's definitely a lot smarter people than I am. But I do see things, openings, and little ways to get in.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too that I think some people who maybe didn't collect in the 90s like we did don't know, like, Ultra cards do not grade well. Those came out of the pack with edge issues galore on the front and the back. For whatever reason, we can sit here and talk about all the different reasons for that. But like getting even an 8 or a 9 on a lot of those Ultra, even the base, is very hard to do. So especially, I do not have a trained eye for condition at all, especially if I'm looking at a picture on the internet. That is just not something that I have a skill for.
It's when you do start to get a skill for it, it's glaring. Like, when you start looking at the shiny gold, it looks shiny at first, but when you start to look at it, a lot of the shine is actually just white. That looks glaring. And so once you can discern from what's the shine and what's actually just the missing foil, that's the cardstock looking back at you, right? That's when it just opens your eyes wide open. You're like, oh, that's all broke. Like right here, I just got a awesome action Michael Jordan. Yep. And I love the card. Looks great. It looked great on eBay. I get home and I'm like, okay, all white chipping, not really chipping, but I see all the white. That's just missing foil all across the stock. I was upset, but I'm actually graded because it is a real card. And I do want to have some cards that aren't, not every card can be a 10 right now, because I'm going through a lot of my cards, putting them in through the GSC Raw Graded review, and they are my pre-graded cards, the cards that I've had set aside to send off to PSA or wherever I was going to send them. But then I was like, you know what? I'll just put them through my own service. So the problem that I ran into is they were already great looking cards. So I don't want people to think all I do is 9s and 10s and 8s. Sure. So I'm getting even some other cards, mixing them in, because I'm just putting the grade that I think it is. My son looked at what I was doing. He says, "Is this legal? You can just grade your own cards?" And I was like, "Yeah, it actually is." but I said if I gave them all 10, then nobody would trust anything I said. So I've stayed away from that. And there's so many cards that are the 9.5, 9.5, 9.59 that are 9s. But I just had to be honest with it because, what's the point?
Right. Yeah, exactly. If there's not integrity in the grades, if you're just going to give handouts to yourself, then, everybody else, when they get the stuff, if you want it to be a respected grade, then you got to, respect the process, as some people would say in the NBA, right? So
exactly.
I think that's really important to know, though, is it's not like anybody's going to get preferential treatment. Even your son, I'm sure, if he wants to grade a card, maybe the fees will be a little bit reduced. I don't know.
I gave him a bunch of Steelers and WWE cards for Christmas, and they're sitting in the exact same stack in his room, not even looked at. He said thank you, and he seemed appreciative. But he's 16 years old, and I'm an old fogey. So
right.
Or he's 15 and a half, and I'm an old fogey. So he'll catch up to how cool my job is later.
Absolutely. It's funny because my daughter, she's 7, and she knows that I like cards, and she gets interested in them. But she doesn't really know how to be careful with them. So when sometimes she wants to, hey, Daddy, can I see some cool cards? So I'll let her look at the ones that are already in slabs. So I feel a little bit better about them. But it's interesting too because one time it was just me and her for the night, and she wanted to look at some of my cards, which I don't, we don't do that a lot because with a little toddler running around, it doesn't take much for him to wreck everything. So I got a box of cards. I said, here, look through them, and I said, what I want to hear is what you like best and why you like it. So hearing her talk about what were some of her favorite cards and what she liked about them, and then she started gravitating towards the same stuff that I liked as a kid, which is really interesting. Yeah. She really liked the acetates and the die cuts. So it was just kind of a fun thing to see through somebody else's eyes who doesn't really, have any vested interest in what's valuable or any of that type of stuff. It's just kind of what's cool to her. So it's fun.
But yeah, I'll always, even though they are the best cards, Michael Jordan cards, just when I look at him, I just remember his games. I remember watching, staying up. It's because my son, he'll watch some games, but I was every Michael Jordan game, I was home from North Carolina. I'm watching it. I'm watching the pregame. I'm watching, and that's all. I would also watch every episode of SportsCenter. So that's another thing I did.
Yeah, there are certain cards for me too that just kind of give me the feels and put me right back to where I was when and there's a few. So I'm a Penny guy, and I know you've heard me tell the stories about the rivalry between my brother and I. And he's a Jordan guy, but there are certain Michael Jordan cards that really hit that sweet spot for me too. And one of them that I remember vividly was you remember I think it was 97-98 Collector's Choice. They had the team sets, and they had the team bowl set, and they had the team card. Oh, yeah. They had the 4 squares of color, and Jordan's in the middle with a bowl in the background, and that card just kind of hits that sweet spot for me. And there's another Jordan card I was looking at the other day, and it's escaping me, but I remember he's in the black pinstripe uniform, and there's just something about it that gives me kind of that. And I'm kicking myself now because I was just looking at that card. I have a copy of it. And
was he wearing 45?
No, he wasn't wearing 45. It was the season after, so it was 95-96. I'll find it. I'll post it on my Instagram and share the story and tag you in it. But yeah, I can't remember which one it is. But some of those cards, they just kind of they make you feel like a kid again. And all cards bring me anyway back to that nostalgia, but some of them a little bit more so than others.
It's a great thing. And the LeBron, I was going to ask you in my interview if you're going to be Grant Hill or Penny Hardaway. I already know your answer, but no injuries for either of them.
Yeah.
Who do you think would have the better career?
So I'm always going to say Penny. but a lot of the reason why I genuinely, so Grant Hill, so let me give Grant Hill his flowers too. I don't want to, both of them would have been great. Grant Hill was one of those guys who could do everything, right? And I have said to people, like, he was kind of LeBron James before LeBron James, in the sense that he was, a 6'8", a point forward, as some people called him, but a small forward by traditional measures. But he could run the point well. But he had game, he had range, he was smooth with the ball on the offensive end. He could post up smaller players, he could play smooth defense. And like LeBron's the same type of player where, like, he's definitely bigger bodied. He's much more physical player than Grant Hill was, but he can do everything. So Grant Hill was an incredible player and would have been absolutely unbelievable in my estimation without injuries. But the reason why I side with Penny is because Penny was one of those players that made the team better. He made the other players around him better. He really, his style of game, I don't want to compare him with statistically or, career achievements, but was a lot more like Magic Johnson. In the sense that, like, it was electric to see him play, especially when there were other, great players on the court with him. When he was paired up with Shaq, it was just, it was magical. Pun intended.
They were kids. They were kids, and what they did against Michael Jordan in the, was it 94, 95 playoffs?
Yeah,
it was that. That's all you have to say to me, because that's the type of stuff that Magic was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'll always side with him, because I think also, like, when he started having the knee injuries, his offensive game was getting better, because he was never really known as a great shooter. He could score well, but I think he was starting to really develop a much more consistent range on his jumper. I always sit there and think about what could have been. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is LeBron James a lot of times says that Penny is the player that he tried to model a lot of his game after. And I really saw that when I remember watching him play in high school. The first thing that I thought of when I saw the first LeBron James game that I saw televised, when he was at St. Vincent, St. Mary, I was like, this guy isn't Jordan, this guy's Magic Johnson. And he was just setting up his teammates before he was even trying to score. So, and you see that play through.
When I saw LeBron playing the high school game, and it was the year Michael Jordan left, I was like, this is just, man, that's the new guy. That's my new guy. And it's period. It was, I love because now when I see Zion, his basketball IQ and some of the moves he was making, and just how more physical he was, I think Zion has way too many injuries, and that'll continue forever. But LeBron being such a freak, high IQ, it was just like the perfect basketball cyborg. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you really couldn't have engineered a better basketball player, I don't think, if you tried. Maybe if he was like 6'11", but he's pretty darn close. He's 6'8", 6'9". So
yeah, well, even if he was 6'11", he'd probably get more injuries. So it's just more like he's just like a machine, like a cyborg.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see, because I know he wants to play until his son's in the league, and wants to play wherever his son is. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I always think about players like that who his legacy is established, but he's still building on it at the same time. So it's going to be interesting, because I didn't really start to appreciate Jordan's legacy, again, because of that rivalry with my brother, until he came back with the Wizards. And I was, those years when he wasn't there, I was like, I really felt like something was missing in the league. And then when he came back, it's like, man, I should have enjoyed it a little bit more. So I try to make sure when the greats are around, I enjoy them now, because I didn't back then.
Well, I was a huge Utah Jazz fan as a kid.
Oh, okay.
So he, as much as I loved Michael Jordan, he just tore my heart out.
Yeah.
And just to see what he did that with everyone. Every team in the 90s that thought that they were something, they ran into the buzzsaw. And
right.
And then now John Stockton, all-time leader in assists and steals, which is the two biggest things you want for a point guard.
Yep.
People just put him way down on like page 2 or 3, And I'm like, no. And they think he's like a system player. And I was like, he had ridiculous amounts of assists, like ungodly amount of assists that nobody else is doing. And I was like, was their system pick and roll, was that so much better?
Well, yeah, I enjoy the thought process behind, without John Stockton, is Karl Malone really Karl Malone? And I think, again, if you think, again, I'm a 90s guy, so if you think of like a prototypical point guard, I think of John Stockton. Like you said, his perimeter defense and his ability to pick pockets and jump lanes was incredible. Obviously his court vision and his passing abilities were second to none. But also, like, people discount him sometimes. He was a very high quality shot taker, right? He did not shoot a ton. He wasn't a volume scorer, but he was very efficient. And he could knock down a jumper, a 3-pointer when you needed him to. So he was not a prolific scorer, but he was a absolutely very capable scorer. And obviously, when you got somebody who's as dominant in the paint and dominant with the pick and roll, you can keep passing to him and he can keep scoring in the paint. With Karl Malone, he doesn't need to do as much of the scoring. But because on the flip side, people could say, well, is there a John Stockton in the assist leader without a Karl Malone to finish, right? So I think the two of them really benefited from each other a lot more than any one of them. I don't think you can discredit either one of them on their own.
Yeah, and even like people put Jerry Sloan way down here, and I think Hornacek had one of the best teardrops. Like, I don't know if he like. I'm not gonna say he's definitely not one of the first, but because I know Pistol Pete and all that. But when Hornacek did it in the 90s, it was like he brought it back and he just put that running little running teardrop that goes up and it comes down, and then I see Tony Parker do it, and I was like, that was Hornacek's move. That's what I got.
Yeah, no, definitely. The thing I'll always remember about Hornacek is his free throw routine where he'd wipe his brow and is the same thing. He was a great free throw shooter, absolutely money from the stripe. So those were such fun finals to watch because it was really, really competitive matchups. So,
but it was like, I don't want to compare it to battle, but I'm comparing it to a movie. But it was like Saving Private Ryan, where the guy's got the knife and he's trying to stop it. And the knife coming down. And that's what it felt like. And then the flu game happened. I'm like, this guy's not sick. You look at him. And it just like, the whole thing was just like, and then watching your team lose, and then watching Michael Jordan go off into the sunset on the push. It was a slight push off, but it was a tiny push off. But he just had his hand on Russell. But I mean, it was perfect, and to see his story end perfectly. But it was just like watching the knife go in Saving Private Ryan. If you're as a Jazz fan.
So before we wrap up, one of the things that I really want to hear. So we know that you love Michael Jordan. But I want to peek a little bit behind the curtain and tell me a little bit about like maybe your favorite card in your collection or both. Like maybe like the number one card that you're trying to get in your collection right now.
Ooh, I'm a simple man, so if I could get any card, I would want the PMGs. The reason why they went off with Marvel is, and they went way up and they were pumped and dumped, and
sure,
but I don't think with all of the insecurity that's going on right now, I don't think that's been fully realized because the PMGs aren't getting made anymore.
Right.
I didn't fully get into the PMGs with Marvel. I don't know if it was 1 year and they came out again, but when they came out again, they were more mass produced. But when you talk about it with basketball, it was you only had that 1 year. And then you had the re-release of the retros, if I'm not mistaken, with the Michael Jordan PMG. But what I was saying is, when people talk about number one movies in the world, number one box office smashes, pop culture, and it's not all about sports. So when you talk about the best movies, the best sci-fi is Marvel right now, and it's been that billion-dollar industry. And the number one best collectible is, if you're not talking about movie set things, but the holdable cards are going to be those PMGs that people can hold. And I think when this fluctuation goes down, and I think that that will be realized. I've told people that the sports memorabilia minds have wanted us to get pogs and bracelets and collector plates and every little thing. At the end of the day, you want somebody's rookie, or you want their rarest PMG, or you want their parallel numbered, and that's at the end of the day, and that's what has won. Unless you're going to get somebody's signed bat or something like that. But the card is, everybody can go to Walgreens, get a card, and do that. So when you talk about pop culture, and especially with everything that Fanatics is going to be doing, and they're going to delve into pop culture, I think that this is not the first time we've seen those PMGs, and they're not a pump and dump. That was a realization. And I don't have any. I'll say that first of all. I don't have any of them, and I never. As soon as I started seeing them go up in value, I lost interest. It's like somebody bragging about how much a house goes for in Beverly Hills. I just tap out. I'm like, okay, well that's cool. But I saw the value. I think it'll just be realized that was not a pump and dump. That Marvel PMGs will. They won't go up to what they just sold for, but they're going to be hardly sought after.
Interesting. I think that's a little bit of a hot take, because I think a lot of people are kind of taking the victor lap right now, saying, I knew that was a pump and dump, and we're seeing that. So I think it'll be interesting, because we are seeing an interesting cycle in the card market right now, where a lot of people who haven't been in for a long time maybe were buying at the peak. And they're seeing a lot of prices going down since then, getting a little bit disenchanted and not exactly feeling like they, maybe they weren't sold a bill of goods, but maybe it wasn't exactly everything that they thought it was. But on the flip side, I think a lot of collectors like ourselves are able to reap the rewards now and pick up cards. There have been some cards that have come up that I've been able to get for penny that have been a lot cheaper than they were, 3-4 years ago, which has been fun.
I think the three largest parts, as seeing it through my eyes, is what you already said earlier. $50, as low as $50, and that just happened a few months ago. It was $100 to send a card off, and so the flippers couldn't flip. And the flipping is part of the hobby. It's not just the best cards. It's not just the PMGs and the vintage and the 1960 Willie Mays. It's flipping, and it's flipping with FOMO, responsibly, not irresponsibly, not with like the bowl. But flipping is a healthy part of the market. It's and it helps. It's interesting. It's fun. It's what hobby collectors like to do, and it's easier when you don't just have a card that it's graded, and it's a graded 10. So price of the cards, and then what we talked about earlier, the slab avalanche, millions and millions of cards coming, and then millions and millions of cards coming back, and people having to pay those PSA submission fees.
Right.
So that means they got to put up some cards. And then third, what we're going through with the prices and with the economy right now. So people coming into the hobby and leaving, just like you were just saying. So, when you have all those things happening at the exact same time, then prices are going to go down. You can submit with me for $7.
Yep.
But that's not going to help with until you get the intrinsic value. So
Right.
it's kind of, I would say it's like the wild west right now, and there's so many amazing deals that are not going to be realized for years. You can get Ja Morant Prism rookies for like $30. Not his best ones, but you can get like cards that aren't realized as some of his best ones. Like you can get like purple disco prism rookie of his for like $50 PSA 10 because of the Slabavalanche coming down, and people are like the collectors are enjoying those great deals. But when the PSA submission price gets to around $30, and then the collectors and the flippers, and there's lots of collectors that are flippers.
Sure.
So a lot of those flippers are going to come back and say, "Oh wow, I can do this card, this card, this card, this." Like one of my LeBron James cards that I enjoyed, the Basketball Diaries LeBron James rookie, that was his Basketball Diaries. But then you had the LeBron James diary set that was rookie set that was more mass produced, and I've been buying that LeBron James diary card because it gets lost in the mix. But with all the Slabavalanche coming down, no one cares. It might as well be this other card because they're both laying around for next to nothing. So right now, neither one of them is a pickup or something you should be buying or investing in, because there's so many great cards that, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, is price points. 30 people are like not going to pay more than $100 for a great card because there's 1,000 more great cards that are sitting there waiting to be bought for less than $100.
Yeah,
it's great for the collectors right now, but when the PSA drops a little bit more, probably around 25, 30, then those collectors are going to come back to flippers and they're going to be buying back. And I think there'll be some normalization after that, but I don't see normalization until then, because I don't think it's a healthy hobby when the only good cards are cards that are worth more than $300, because then it's only for rich people.
Sure.
If all you have is $1,000 cards, then that's great, and you're rich, and that's amazing. But I like to think that there's a lot more good cards, and that I like to think that there's a whole swath of awesome, amazing people that love cards, and they would like to have a little bit more bang for their buck and economy with their cards. Because you, like right now, tonight, I sold a, and I'm not complaining, I sold a Pop 15 Damian Lillard rookie for, I think it went for like $22. And it was one of his Brilliance cards. And it was shiny, super hard to grade. So I was like, oh, I thought that would went for a lot more. So I'm not complaining, but the economy of that is a great card, and that it should be realized, but it's not. It's kind of, there's, like I said, it's the wild west right now. So we'll see things coming back to normal when, after all these cards have come back and price goes down a little bit, and people are sending off good cards, not the base cards. So people have definitely learned a lot over the last 2 years.
Yeah, myself included.
Yeah. And it's good for everybody that people have learned a lot. They're not going for base, they're going for rookies, and I think it's a good thing. But right now, I think there's a lot of collectors that are getting burnt, and you said they feel like they've been sold a bill of goods, and now we have all these cards that are the value's gone down.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
it's not a good thing.
Yeah, at least people feeling a little sour sometimes. So this has been a great conversation. I can't wait to get to Atlantic City and share some food or something and chat up more. But before we get off, I want to make sure that you have a chance. Where can people find you? And anything else that you want to plug or make sure that we haven't talked about yet to make sure to share with everybody.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm usually on the internet. I'm GradedSports.Cards, YouTube, Instagram, but the biggest thing, of course, is the website GradedSports.Cards, www.GradedSports.Cards, no .com or anything like that. And then if you do want to use the service and you've seen it on this podcast, I do ask for an affiliate code at some point where you can just input where did you hear about us, and you can put 90BB for 90s basketball. And I just want to thank you and give us we also have a thing called test drive, so you can send in 10 cards for just a raw review grade for $60, or you can send in 10 for 120 with subgrades. So that's you don't hear that. So $120, 10 cards with subgrades, and you get to see how the sausage is made. You get to, if you're thinking a card is like, is this one really look good? We'll be able to tell exactly, and you'll see is it a 7, is it a 9? If you think the card's a 10, you can send it in for $7 and to see what it's worth. If you want to see the subgrades, it's a little bit more, and use 90BB. So that Jake gets the credit for that. Awesome.
Appreciate that. So 90BB on GradedSports.Cards if you want to shoot your cards over and see what they're going to get. I think it's great. I'm going to be excited to see some of the cards that come through your doors, and it's going to be fun. Fun for sure.
I really and thanks for having me on. I've been a huge fan, and also I don't know if everyone knows that watches this, but Jake is he's like a celebrity in the hobby. Everybody knows Jake. Everybody wants to I was in the hospital at the National because I had a stomach stricture, a little bit of the problem with the food, but also because it was so hot that my equilibrium was off, and I just my intestines had a stricture because I sweated so much. But anyways, I had 5 days in Chicago, and 1.5 of them were in the hospital. And I was looking on Instagram, and everybody was like, "I'm over here with Jake." And I was like, "Ah." So anyway, everyone loves Jake, and he's one of the hobby heroes for a good reason. But of course, if you're watching this podcast, you know that. So.
I appreciate it. I'm not Ken Golden yet, but
you're our Ken Golden.
All right, I'll take it. Awesome. We'll do this again soon for sure.
All right. Appreciate it, bud.